while the crickets sang their midnight lullaby and Amina slept like a child, blissfully unaware. Her mother was in the next room, on her knees, whispering desperate prayers and pleading with the man she once called her husband. "Please, don't do this. She's our only child. Find another way. There must be another way," she begged, her voice trembling as tears soaked her wrapper. But her husband? Cold as stone. He didn't even flinch. Morning came like a thief, snatching away every bit of peace. Amina stretched lazily, expecting a normal day. Maybe a walk to the stream. Maybe studying under the tree with her books. She didn't know her life was about to be ripped apart. Her mother entered quietly, eyes swollen and red, like someone who hadn't closed them all night. She pulled Amina into a tight embrace. Too tight, like she was saying goodbye. Before Amina could ask what was wrong, she saw him, standing by the doorway, barefoot, wearing the same worn-out brown tunic he always wore, the man her father had promised her to, the so-called son of the late chief, once destined for greatness, now reduced to a village joke after his uncle stole everything his father left behind. His name was Kofi, poor, silent, broken Kofi, and apparently, now, her husband. Tradition, they said. You can't owe a dead man. His spirit will come for you. So her father, wise in all things except compassion, paid his dues. With her. Not a single ounce of guilt on his face, not even a blink. Amina didn't get a moment to argue or protest. She barely had time to grab her bag. Kofi didn't offer help. He didn't even look her in the eye. He simply turned around and began walking, like she was some goat bought at the market. She struggled behind him, dragging her little bag across the dusty path. People stared, some whispered, a few shook their heads in pity. But the ceremony was done. She was his. And just when everyone thought they'd seen it all, boom, Kofi stopped walking. Right there on the dusty village path, he turned around. Then, he did the most ridiculous, unbelievable thing anyone could imagine. He knelt, right there in the dirt. Gasps flew through the air like arrows. Women clutched their wrappers. Men leaned in. "I have something to say," he said, loud enough for the entire village square to hear. "I've lied. To you, to her, to everyone." Amina froze. Her heart skipped. He reached into his torn pocket and pulled out something that didn't belong in his world. A shiny golden key. A key. "Wait, what?" someone muttered. The villagers buzzed like bees. "I'm not who you think I am," he continued. Amina's legs buckled, her vision blurred. What was happening? Before she could even question it, Kofi stood, grabbed her hand, not roughly this time, gently, and led her away from the hut, not toward it, away, past the fields, past the stream, toward the forbidden forest, the place children were warned never to enter. And there, hidden behind the thickest trees, stood a massive iron gate, covered in vines. Silent. Secret. Kofi slid the key into the lock. Click. The gate groaned open. What lay beyond made Amina's soul nearly flee her body. Not a hut, not a shed, not even a fancy house. A palace. Yes. A whole palace, glittering like something stolen from a fairy tale. There were fountains dancing in the sunlight, flowers blooming in colors she'd never seen. Servants, real human beings, bowed low the moment they saw Kofi. Amina's lips parted, but no words came out. He turned to her and said softly, "This is your real home." Now pause. What? Kofi? The man who wouldn't even carry her bag? She couldn't believe it. Neither could the villagers who had followed like curious chickens and were now frozen at the gate, mouths wide open. The villagers erupted like a shaken hornet's nest, gasps, yells, some even dropping to their knees as if the ground itself had betrayed them. Right in the middle of it all stood Amina, her eyes locked on the man she thought she knew. Kofi turned to her, his face a storm of guilt and tenderness. "I never wanted to lie to you," he murmured, voice low. But you have a right to know now. Everything. Before Amina could piece her thoughts together, a finely dressed servant hurried up, breathless, and bowed so deeply his cap nearly touched the dust. "Master Kofi," he announced, "all is prepared." Master Kofi. The words slammed into her like thunder. She blinked, confused. This quiet, muddy-booted farmer? A master? Without another word, he led her past gasping villagers into a sprawling mansion she'd never seen before, hidden in plain sight like some royal secret. Inside, the place was dripping with opulence. Crystal chandeliers, gold-trimmed furniture, and a feast worthy of a coronation. Roasted meat, glistening fruits, exotic sweets that once only danced in her daydreams. "Please eat," Kofi said gently, pulling a chair for her. But Amina sat frozen. Her fingers trembled over the untouched plate. Her voice cracked like dry wood as she finally spoke. "Why pretend? Why live like a peasant? And why... me? Why marry me?" Kofi sighed, rubbing his temple. "My father wasn't just any man. He was the late chief, so powerful, so rich, even the king blinked when he walked by. But that kind of wealth is a curse in disguise. The envy it drew..." He paused. "The king's men, the council elders, even our own blood, they feared him, hated him. And when he died, murdered by his own greedy relatives, they stole what they thought was everything." He chuckled bitterly. What they got? Just crumbs. Not even 10% of what he left behind. The real fortune. He hid it. Village to village, scattered like pieces of a puzzle only I could solve. Amina's heart thudded. "Then, why reveal yourself now?" He looked at her then, not as a poor man, not as a wealthy heir, but as someone who had seen too much too young. "Because I couldn't watch you suffer. I heard your father was drowning in debts. Debts owed to my late father. And when the repayment day came, he chose to pay with you." Amina's lips trembled. He sold me off." "Not quite," Kofi replied. "One of my uncles wanted to claim you, and trust me. He's the kind of man that makes nightmares look friendly. But I couldn't let that happen. I'd noticed you long before this debt drama, watched how you smiled even when life gave you stones. So I begged, pleaded, convinced them to let me take you." A tear finally slid down her cheek. She wasn't just a pawn in her father's desperate game. She was the woman Kofi had risked everything for, even his secret identity. And just like that, the man she thought was ordinary turned out to be the only one who ever truly saw her. Amina's words were on the edge of her lips when a deafening crash shattered the calm. The doors flew open, and a group of heavily armed men surged into the room. At the forefront stood a man, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Kofi Olumide, we've finally tracked you down," he sneered, his grin wide and full of triumph. Kofi's face drained of color, his eyes flickering with panic. Amina's heart dropped into her stomach. The man standing before them was the one who had been responsible for the brutal murder of Kofi's father. And now, they had come for him. The leader's gaze shifted, locking onto Amina with cruel amusement. "And who might this be?" His voice dripped with mockery. "Your new bride?" Kofi instinctively moved in front of Amina, his body acting as a shield. "Don't you dare harm her," he warned, his voice cold but firm. The man chuckled darkly, his eyes gleaming with a sinister light. "Oh, we won't harm her if you hand over every last coin of your fortune." Amina's pulse quickened as she stared at the men, their weapons gleaming in the dim light of the mansion. Kofi clenched his fists, his body taut with tension. The leader of the men, a scarred villain known as Zeke, flicked a blade in his hand with a mock flourish. "The money, Kofi," he growled, "or your wife's life." Amina's breath caught in her throat. Just hours ago, she had believed she was marrying a simple farmer. Now, she found herself trapped in a deadly game, with her life on the line over a fortune she had no idea existed. Kofi's jaw tightened as his eyes flicked between the men surrounding them. Slowly, he reached under his cloak and pulled out a small iron chest, his fingers trembling as he tossed it at Zeke's feet. "Take it!" he spat. "But if you touch her, you'll regret it." Zeke's laughter echoed off the walls as he scooped up the chest. "A man in love, huh? Pathetic." He waved his hand and his men began to ransack the house. Kofi grabbed Amina's wrist and whispered urgently, "Come with me." His voice was strained, fear flickering behind his eyes. They ran through a hidden door, down a narrow stone stairway, the darkness closing in around them. The only sound was the hurried thudding of their feet against the cold stone. "Where are we going?" Amina gasped for air, her heart racing. "A secret passage," Kofi answered, his voice low and tense. "It leads to the river. We can escape there." But before they reached the bottom of the stairs, a loud crash echoed above them. "They found the tunnel!" Kofi swore under his breath. "Run!" The passage led them to a cliff, where the roar of the river below threatened to drown out all other sounds. Just as they reached the edge, the flickering light of torches appeared in the distance. Zeke and his men were closing in. Kofi turned to Amina, panic flashing in his eyes. "We have to jump." Amina's heart leaped into her throat as she stared at the rushing water below, jagged rocks breaking the surface like the teeth of a hungry beast. "Are you insane?" she shouted. "We'll die." "Trust me," Kofi pleaded, grabbing her hand as the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. With nowhere to run, Amina's instincts took over. She screamed and leaped, her body plunging into the freezing water. The current seized her, pulling her under, twisting her in every direction. Her heavy dress clung to her like chains, dragging her deeper into the cold, dark water. She gasped for air, fighting against the force pulling her down. Then strong arms gripped her waist, hauling her upward. Kofi's face appeared above her, his expression set in determination. He fought against the current, pulling her towards the shore until they finally collapsed on the muddy bank, gasping for breath. Amina slapped Kofi hard across the face, tears mixing with the river water. "You lied to me!" she shouted, her voice breaking with anger and fear. "You brought this danger to me! I could have died!" Kofi didn't flinch, his voice rough and raw. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." But before Amina could respond, the sound of galloping hooves reached their ears, followed by the glint of spears in the moonlight. They had been found. Amina clutched Kofi's arm, her nails digging into his skin as the riders drew closer. "Is it them? Did they follow us?" Kofi's face was unreadable. "Stay quiet," he muttered. A dozen riders in dark cloaks surrounded them, their faces hidden in shadow. The leader of the riders dismounted, the heavy sound of his boots sinking into the mud as he walked toward them. Kofi's eyes softened in relief. "You're late, Gideon." The cloaked man bowed low, his voice full of respect. "Forgive me, Master Kofi. The roads were being watched." Gideon turned his attention to Amina, his gaze assessing her. "So this is her?" Kofi nodded. "My wife." Amina's heart fluttered at the words, though confusion quickly replaced the warmth spreading through her chest. "Who are these men?" she asked, her voice shaky. Kofi hesitated before answering, his voice quiet. "My father's private guards, the ones who survived the massacre." Gideon stepped forward, his expression grim. "Zeke was your father's most trusted advisor until he betrayed him for gold. He's been hunting you ever since." Kofi's jaw clenched in fury, his fists shaking with restraint. "He won't get away with it." Amina's hands trembled as she listened, but she still didn't understand. "Then why not just give it to him?" she asked, her voice rising in frustration. "Why risk our lives for this money?" Kofi's eyes burned with an intensity she had never seen before. "That money doesn't just belong to me. It feeds entire villages, builds schools. It's for the future of so many people. I won't let Zeke take it." Amina stared at him, her mind racing. This wasn't the humble farmer she had married. This was a man with purpose, a warrior, and she was his wife. As the wind howled around them and the shadows of their enemies closed in, Amina knew one thing for certain: there was no going back now. After a long and exhausting day, Kofi led Amina through the camp, his heart heavy with unspoken words. He had something special prepared for her, something that would bring a fleeting light to the darkness that had surrounded them for so long. He had kept it hidden from her, but now, in the quiet moments between the dangers, he wanted to offer her something more than survival. He wanted to offer her love. "Stay close," he whispered softly, as he gently tied a blindfold around Amina's eyes. She felt his strong hands, so familiar yet tender, guiding her through the camp. "Trust me," he urged, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling in his chest. Amina's heart pounded, curiosity and excitement mixing with the weight of everything that had happened. She nodded, allowing herself to be led, unsure of what to expect, but certain that Kofi was the only one who could make her feel safe in such a chaotic world. They came to a stop. She could sense the stillness, the change in the air. Kofi slowly removed the blindfold, and when Amina opened her eyes, she gasped. In front of her was a beautiful sight, small lights flickering in the darkness, casting a soft glow over the area. The warriors who had once fought with bloodshed and rage now stood in a circle, clapping their hands in rhythm, their faces no longer hardened with battle, but softened in respect. It was a celebration, a quiet moment of peace. There, standing before her, was Kofi, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. His clothes were still torn from battle, but his face was filled with a deep tenderness as he met her eyes. "Amina," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I know this marriage hasn't been what you deserve. I know we've been rushed into this, and it hasn't been proper. But I want to make it right. My father used to tell me that a man must fight for what he loves, and I've fought for you. I want to own you properly, Amina. I want to give you everything, not just this chaos." Amina's breath caught as she looked at him, seeing the raw honesty in his eyes, a love she hadn't realized she'd been waiting for. All this time, she thought Kofi had married her out of necessity, out of survival. But now, standing before her, was a man who loved her, not because he had to, but because he truly wanted to. As he reached for her hands, she saw the flicker of hesitation in his eyes, as if he feared she might not feel the same. But before she could respond, a sudden, sharp pain pierced his hand. An arrow shot from the distance, striking him. Amina gasped, her eyes widening in horror as Kofi fell to his knees. The men who had been watching this tender moment now turned, their expressions hardening as the attack began. "Get her out of here!" Kofi shouted, his voice filled with urgency as he struggled to rise, blood beginning to stain his shirt. "Gideon!" Kofi called, his voice strained. "Take her! Protect her!" Without a second thought, Gideon, ever faithful, rushed forward. He helped Amina to her feet, his own expression filled with worry, but also determination. "Come, Amina, we must go." As Amina was led away, her heart heavy with the fear of losing the man she had just realized she loved, she looked back one last time at Kofi. The sight of him, injured and still fighting, only made her heart ache more. She knew he would never give up on her, just as he had never given up on what he believed in. "I'll come back for you." Kofi's voice echoed in her mind, his words a promise, a vow. Amina had no doubt that he would. Amina was in shock. The world she had known only hours before seemed to shatter as Gideon's voice echoed in her ears. "He's gone, Amina," Gideon said, his voice low but unwavering. "Kofi, he's dead." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Kofi, the man she had learned to love in the most unexpected of ways, the man who had risked everything to protect her, was gone. And yet, part of her couldn't grasp it. Was it really true? Was he really Dead? Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. The same man she had once hated, the one who had turned her life upside down and dragged her through danger, the man who had married her out of what she thought was some cruel game. Now, he was the one who had given her everything. He had fought for her, loved her when she had nothing left to give, and now he was gone. She had never told him that she cared, that she wanted him too. She looked at Gideon, who was standing tall, his expression serious but tinged with sadness. You don't have to stay here, Amina. You're free. With Kofi gone, you're free to go back to your life. The words echoed in Amina's mind, and a part of her screamed to run, to escape this nightmare. But another part, the part that had come to know Kofi's true heart, refused to move. She couldn't. She couldn't go back to a life where no one saw her, where no one cared. Kofi had seen her. He had fought for her. And now, in the face of his loss, she would do whatever it took to honor him. No, she whispered, shaking her head, her voice raw. I won't leave. I won't go back. Not without him. Gideon's eyes softened, and he nodded slowly. I understand. Together they returned to Kofi's mansion, the once majestic place now silent, as if it too mourned the loss of its master. The gates that had once opened to reveal a world of grandeur and mystery now seemed cold and lifeless. Amina's heart ached as she walked past the grand entrance. This was the place where Kofi had shown her a different life, one that was filled with love, protection, and purpose. She stopped in the middle of the courtyard, her gaze drifting to the spot where Kofi had once knelt before her, a man of power with nothing but tenderness in his eyes. The tears she had held back began to spill over. How could she have known? How could she have hated him? All of that was behind her now, and all she wanted was to have him back. As they entered the grand hall, Amina's heart raced. Every inch of this place had been touched by Kofi's presence. She could almost hear him, his laughter, his promises, his voice calling her name. But he was gone. Just then, the door creaked open, and Amina froze. Her breath caught in her throat. A figure stepped into the doorway, silhouetted in the dim light. It couldn't be. It had to be a dream. Amina's mind was spinning. Kofi, she whispered, disbelief coating her voice. And then he spoke. Amina. Kofi's voice was hoarse but undeniably real. I'm here. Her legs wobbled and she felt like the world had stopped spinning. Was this really happening? Was Kofi truly standing before her, alive? Alive after all? The tears came flooding now, unstoppable. Amina ran toward him, not caring that she had just been crying over his death moments ago. You... Her voice broke, her hands trembling as she reached for him. I thought you were gone. I thought you were... Kofi stepped forward, pulling her into his arms. His strong arms that had once fought for her, now holding her with tenderness. I know, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I never wanted you to think I was dead. But I couldn't let you see what I was going through, the danger I was in. I had to protect you. I didn't want you to carry the burden of my enemies. Amina's mind was racing. You left me, she whispered, pulling back just enough to look him in the eye. You left me to believe you were dead. I hated you. I hated you for doing this to me. Kofi's expression softened. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making it right. But I need you to understand, Amina. I did it because I love you, more than you know. Amina blinked, tears still streaming down her face. She had hated him. She had wanted to run from him. But now, she couldn't deny what her heart had known all along. She loved him too. She had never stopped. I don't care what you did anymore, she whispered, her voice shaking. I just want you. I want to be with you. Kofi smiled, a smile that filled Amina with warmth. Then we'll fight together. From now on, we fight together, Amina. No more secrets, no more lies, just us. And in that moment, Amina realized the truth. She hadn't just married him out of duty. She had married him because she had found something rare, someone who saw her, loved her, and would never give up on her, no matter the cost. The future was uncertain, but Amina was no longer afraid. She had Kofi, and for the first time, she felt truly free. I hope this captures the depth, emotion, and unexpected twists you wanted. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe for more gripping tales like this.